here's what you need to know.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, good morning. It's now 6 o'clock. Last night in the NBA.
And pull there.
All guard dominated here down the stretch, but let AD get a touch here.
Reeves, deep shot for the Lakers.
Lakers down 19 with under 8 minutes to play in the game. They come back and top the Bucks 128-124 in double overtime. Austin Reeves a triple-double. Anthony Davis 34 points, 23 rebounds. He played 52 minutes. LA has won 4 straight. Trailblazers continue their 7-game road trip tonight. They'll meet the Hawks in Atlanta. Tip-off at 4:30. Game day at 3 here on 620 Rip City Radio. From the NFL, owners' meetings this week have brought changes. The league will schedule 2 games on Christmas Day, Wednesday for the 24th season. Coaches will now get a third challenge with just 1 successful challenge, and the league will adopt the USFL-style kickoff rules to increase returns after 1,970 touchbacks last season. Kentucky AD Mitch Barnhart confirms John Calipari will return as coach.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. It's RCM with Justin Myers, right here on your home of the Portland Trailblazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
Well, good morning, my friends. Chad doing in for Justin Myers, Rip City Mornings. I've got one eye open, and I'm trying to adjust my vision after about 2.5 hours of sleep last night. But my man Justin did step up to the plate. He did a really poor job of putting the staff at risk of all sorts of issues, but he made amends by delivering me coffee. And that really is the way to my heart. I came in, and I saw this yesterday in the studio where he supplied me with plenty of coffee for my Nespresso machine so I can remain caffeinated. So I appreciate Justin. A nice little friendly touch. I've got all sorts of different roasts and different flavors to try. And that's really, if you ever want to get on my good side, just do it by coffee. It's a friendly beverage, and Justin took care of us. So he's on vacation, so you've got a combination of me and Chris Burkhart, along with Brenden, to take care of you the rest of the week and into the beginning of next week. So Justin is on vacation, enjoying some time away with his wife. And I will be in today. I'll be back on Monday. Chris Burkhart will have Thursday and Friday for you. So hopefully you're having a good morning. Coming up on the show, we're going to talk NBA with Keith Smith at 8:20. We are now in the official stretch run of the NBA season, and the playoffs are now starting to come into focus, which is great. And I love what we're seeing at the top on both sides in both conferences. Right now, Boston is way out in front, 11 games in front of Milwaukee, who took that hideous loss last night to the Lakers. You've got Milwaukee, Cleveland, and New York, but 13.5 games separate those 4 teams because Boston sits at 57-15 and looking really good. In the Western Conference, Denver has a half-game lead on Oklahoma City and a 1.5 game lead on Minnesota. Really, the Western Conference is a 3-team race. The Clippers in 4th are 6.5 back. The 10 teams about 2 weeks ago in the Western Conference appeared to be the playoff teams, but the Golden State Warriors have stumbled. And right now, the Houston Rockets, who are the hottest team in the league, have won 9 straight. They're looking to take Golden State out. Now, the interesting part for Portland, they own Golden State's first-round pick. So the Warriors missing the play-in and the postseason would be great because it would increase the chances of that pick becoming even more viable for the Trailblazers. It's top 4 protected, so all you want is for the Warriors not to get very lucky and jump up into the top 4 of the draft. So we'll get his take on the playoff race. Is there anyone that can slow down the Denver Nuggets? Is it Boston? Milwaukee possibly? Is there anyone in the Western Conference? The 2 big questions I've had about the West all year, not about Denver. I think they're the best team in the NBA and likely going to win the championship again because their starting 5 is legit, but they've got the best player on the planet. And the Nuggets, if you watch them play right now, they're starting to tighten things up. Michael Malone is, starting to get on his guys. They're tightening up on the defensive end, and their execution and their chemistry, because they've had a group of guys who have been together, is terrific. They've won 4 straight. but can anyone challenge them? My two big question marks are Oklahoma City and Minnesota. They have had terrific seasons. Oklahoma City's got a lot of young talent. Minnesota is a little bit more of a veteran-laden team, but the two things these teams have in common are not a ton of playoff experience together. So will that lack of experience prevent them from being able to get over on the Nuggets in a 7-game playoff series? I would think so. But I'm intrigued by that race in the West, and I'm wondering how that's going to shake out. And then with Boston, is Milwaukee or anyone else going to be able to challenge? The Bucks, I want the Bucks to get there because I'm pulling for Dame. I'd love to see him in the NBA Finals, but their defense has been hit and miss throughout the course of the year. And I just don't know if Doc Rivers is going to have enough to be able to get this team over the top. I don't trust Doc Rivers. I don't trust Milwaukee's defense. And I did see that funny stat. Adrian Griffin, who was ousted as Bucks head coach, 30-13 was his record at the time of the firing. Doc Rivers, I think, his current record with the Bucks, 14-12. See, the weird part about Doc Rivers, I question a lot of his decision-making and in-game adjustments or lack thereof, and I think a lot of people do. But yet he's beloved by players, and guys enjoy being around him because he's a player's coach. And then you have a guy like Adrian Griffin who was getting production from his team, but the players didn't like him. You had that run-in with Terry Stotts to begin the year, and the team had to make a shift and a change on defense because Coach Griffin didn't have a defensive system in place, and he was very rigid and probably a little bit insecure in his first time as head coach, and it didn't work out. And that was one of those situations, from my understanding, where Giannis stepped up and was like, that's the guy I want. Instead of going after Nick Nurse, who is hard to play for but gets results, they went after Adrian Griffin because Giannis gave the sign-off. And they bring him in, and it turns out to be a disaster. And so they're stuck in a situation where they need a new head coach, and the only viable championship-type coach that's out there is Doc Rivers. And, of course, Doc Rivers' title came many years ago in Boston, and he's had a lot of interesting results in the postseason since then, mostly big collapses, like we saw last night with that 19-point lead. They were up 19 on the Lakers with just under 8 minutes to play, and they blew the game. They lose it in double overtime, and after the game, Doc Rivers tried to make some type of explanation for what went down.
Yeah, I've been around enough that I don't overdo that. Like, it's one game, We let our foot off, and you got burned. That's all that is. I thought when we played right at the beginning of the game, it was beautiful basketball. We stopped playing right and thought we could still win, and we couldn't. So, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. Really appreciate your time there. Thank you for blowing another game and spending so much time discussing it afterwards. So there you go. And for me, with the Blazers in their transition right now as they go through the rebuild, I'm just looking for something to latch on to. And the Bucks are it because they got Dame. And I want to see Dame do well, and I want to see him on an NBA final stage. I think that'd be fun. But the rest of my sports life is a disaster. The Denver Broncos are a mess as they go through a rebuild of their own. Sean Payton is trying to find a quarterback. Is that going to come in the draft this year? Is it going to come in free agency next year? Will it come in the draft next year? So many question marks. So the Broncos are a mess. The Russ 2-year experiment was awful and did not work out in the Broncos' favor. And the Blazers right now are going through a rebuild. And depending on who you talk to, they're either in year 3 or in year 1. I consider it more of a first year of a larger process of trying to rebuild. So the Blazers, it's going to take some time. I'm enjoying this year watching some of the player development, but in terms of, being able to dig in and really enjoy the games game to game, it's tough because they're losing. They're somewhat competitive, but it's just a rough watch when you see a team going through a rebuild. And the funny thing is, a lot of people want the rebuild. They want to see a team start from scratch. They want them to acquire assets to be able to go out and pick players in the draft and then be able to have the resources to make trades and rebuild the team. But no one wants to go through the process of a rebuild. But that's what the Trailblazers are doing right now. And so the Blazers are bad. The Broncos are bad. Everything's just bad. So I'm trying to latch onto something. So I'm like, come on, Dame. Pick me up, man. Give me something to latch onto for the postseason. But the Bucks, I just don't know if they have enough. We could be on a collision course with Boston and Denver. And the weird part about the Nuggets, They don't have the look of a traditional dynasty because they don't have multiple superstars. They've got one superstar in Jokic. Jamal Murray's really darn good, but not on the same level. And they just got a group of players that know their role, embrace it, and go out there and attack, which I respect. The league, I'm telling you, if you're a young player out there, it's very simple. If you understand what you can do to best help your team, and then you embrace that role and you work your tail off in practice and in your personal time to improve your game, and you do what the coaches want you to do, and then when you get on the floor, you focus on what you do best to serve your team and embrace your role, you're going to carve out a niche for yourself. Most guys don't understand that, and they're unwilling to sacrifice and do what is necessary to help the team, and they're worried about their touches mostly because of contracts, right? Because guys get paid by putting up offensive numbers. But a lot of times, if you just focus on your role and you do it well and you help your team win, you can carve out a nice niche for yourself and have a long NBA career. You may not get the touches you want. You may miss out on a couple of dollars because you're not a big offensive star who's putting up 25 points a night. But if you help your team win and you're willing to embrace your role, you can carve out a long career. But most guys don't understand that. They don't understand it. They worry about their own touches, and that's where the issues play in. So we'll see how things play out. And I know many of you go through the same cycle, with your teams. This team's bad. I can't watch them. I can't do this, but that's where I'm at right now. I've had years of greatness with my teams, but as a sports fan, it's just kind of meh. And so I'm searching around trying to find other things to latch onto. The tournament will resume tomorrow, Thursday, the Sweet 16. I think the first game involves Arizona Clemson just after 4 o'clock, and then we'll kick into the weekend with the Elite Eight. So it's going to be cool because we're going to find out real soon who's going to be playing for a championship. This is a unique year because the Chalk has advanced and survived. All 4 number 1 seeds are still around. UConn looks terrific. I think Purdue is a tough matchup. They're going to play Gonzaga. I'm interested in watching Zach Edey, the big for Purdue. I don't know what his basketball future holds. I don't know if he can play in the NBA, but I like watching him in college. Dominant force, and he's a tough matchup. With Edey, I look at him the same way that I looked at, a Chet Holmgren type. Does he have the foot speed to be able to move well enough to deal with some of the smaller, more agile 4s and 5s in the NBA? The one thing that Chet Holmgren has done that has shocked the heck out of me, and he's playing well, and yet another example of where I was wrong so far, is that he's one of those unique bigs where he's got enough foot speed to be able to defend, and he can defend all 3 levels. He's good in the pick and roll. He can contest the 3-point line, and he can get out and move around, which is cool. And I didn't think he could do it, and now he's doing it, and he's one of those unique new age bigs in the NBA, and he's dominating and playing good basketball and really helping the Thunder right now, and part of the reason why they're up near the top in the Western Conference. They've got him and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a great cast of role players around him. But Zach Edey's one of those guys where I don't know. I don't know how he's going to fit in the NBA, but right now in college, it's terrific. North Carolina looks good. They're going to be taking on Alabama. That should be a high-scoring type affair, I would think. Alabama's got great offense. They don't play particularly good defense. And then we'll see how the rest of the tournament plays out. Houston and Duke down in Dallas should be a physical matchup. Houston's a very good defensive team, by far the best defensive team in the country. But I don't know if the Zags can get over. Surprising run to the Sweet 16 this year based on how their season went, but Purdue may be a little bit too much. So that's what we got on tap, the NFL draft. I've got thoughts on that I want to get to. I'm a big fan of Coach Prime. I know many of you are not. He said some things that I thought were foolish, and I'll explain that as well. And I'll give you the latest update on Shohei Ohtani and talk about the most likely scenarios that went down with him. His new interpreter talked in the statement a couple of days ago, and the situation with the gambling and the bookmaker down in SoCal that got busted. I want to share some thoughts on that as well. It's also a Worldwide Wednesday, so Brendan's going to dig up some interesting stories that we'll get to at 7:45. You can join us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and pull up our homepage, Rip City Radio 620. You'll find the live links to our local shows. You can join us on the YouTube stream and in the YouTube chat if you would like. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number, and you'll find me on X at Chad in Rip City. So when we come back, we'll dig into Shohei Ohtani. I'll share a clip from Brenden Lang, who joined me last week, and we'll discuss and hear from the interpreter as well. And if you got thoughts on how you think that went down, you can reach out and let me know. Chad doing in for Justin Myers. It's Rip City Mornings here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, I mentioned what I'm trying to find joy in with all of my teams sucking right now across all sports. Jeffrey reached out to me and said, if we can latch onto the Lakers, hopefully not making a playoff run since the Blazers are on a rebuild. Maybe I'm just a hater, LOL. Well, don't feel bad, Jeffrey. I'm a sports hater as well. I think we all have that as sports fans. We have things that we like, and we have teams and fan bases and players we root against. The Lakers are definitely one of those teams. There's no question. And for me, I can't stand LeBron. I know he's great, one of the all-time greats, one of the best players ever, but I think he's a fraud, and I can't stand him, and so I don't want him to win. I don't want him to get another championship. I don't want him to even up the number that Kobe has at 5, and if LeBron were to win another, he would get to 5, and that would be problematic. It would be despicable. I don't need that. You don't need that. None of us need that. So I will pull against the Lakers. Although I respect Anthony Davis, I like watching him play because there aren't too many bigs who have played the game that can do the things that he can do and handle the rock the way he can handle it. Most guys at that size should not have a guard handle, and yet he does. And he was terrific last night. And I know a lot of people like to bang on Anthony Davis because of the injuries or, sometimes he plays, sometimes he doesn't. You can't rely on him. All I know is that when he's healthy, it works his tail off. And the guy's dominant. And he was great last night, 34 points, 23 rebounds in 52 minutes of action. But, yeah, I've got multiple players and teams that I root against or hate against. And when my teams are bad, it increases my hate, and I start to pull against other teams and fan bases that are having great success even more. Stuff drives you crazy. Part of the reason why, I don't like Gonzaga. They're stronger than horseradish. They're fans. They're everywhere. They annoy me. I respect Mark Few a great deal, and I think it's amazing what he's turned that program into, but I can't stand him. So I root against Gonzaga, and I think it's funny when they get knocked out of the tournament. I really do. I find pleasure in other people's misery when my teams stink. It is what it is. I'm just telling you the truth. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about Shohei Ohtani and this whole gambling situation with his former interpreter and, according to all reports, longtime friend and brother-like character in Ippy Mizuhara, who is now out after being accused by Ohtani of stealing millions to the tune of $4.5 million to pay off gambling debts to this SoCal bookmaker down in Los Angeles. So a couple of different things here. So to just reset the story real quick, based on all the things I could gather, Ippy Mizuhara, this interpreter, apparently a couple of years ago or a year ago, he crossed paths with this bookmaker at some poker tournament down in San Diego. That's where they originally met. And this bookmaker from Southern California was taking big action from many people. Well, the feds started to investigate this guy down in SoCal. His last name is Boyer. I think it's Bowyer. And they ended up raiding his house. And when they raided his house and started going through his affairs, that's where they uncovered the name of Shohei Ohtani. And these wire transfers that were going under the title of loan at about $500,000 per transaction. So when the LA Times and ESPN got a hold of this information and Shohei's name was attached to it, they started to ask questions. And then the investigative reporter got a 90-minute sit-down with Mizuhara to discuss these transactions. And that's where the story came out that it was Shohei Ohtani who was being a good friend and helping to cover these gambling debts from his interpreter to this bookmaker down in SoCal. And then shortly after that 90-minute sit-down that Mizuhara had with the investigative reporter, like most reporters do, they'll go back to a few other people to cross-check and double-check the story. And so when they went back to Ohtani's crew to cross-check some of the things that they had picked up from Mizuhara, that's when the story suddenly changed. And it went from Ohtani helping a friend out to cover some gambling debts to all of a sudden, we had no knowledge of this, and he was stealing from me. And there was a press conference a couple of days ago with his new interpreter, and Ohtani was able to speak on several different things. And I want you to take a listen to this. Ohtani's new interpreter, Will Ireton, discussing some of the different details around the case.
And finally, when we went back to the hotel and talked one-to-one, that was when I found out that he had a massive debt. And it was revealed to me during that meeting that Ipe admitted that he was sending money using my account to the bookmaker.
All right, so according to Ohtani, he had no knowledge until his interpreter had told him what was going on, and so this was all news to him. And they went on.
Up until a couple of days ago, I didn't know that this was happening. In conclusion, Ipe has been stealing money from my account and has told lies.
All right, so my former interpreter has been stealing money and telling lies.
So I never bet on baseball or any other sports, or never have asked somebody to do it on my behalf. And I have never went through a bookmaker to bet on sports.
All right, I thought that was big there. He said that he's never bet on sports, and he's never had anyone do it for him, and he's never utilized a bookmaker. Now, a lot of people have asked, why would Ohtani, if he was gambling, use a bookmaker like this guy down in SoCal? And my only thought on that would be is that you use a bookmaker who's under the radar until, of course, you're being investigated by the feds, but you do that so that you can place bets and move large amounts of money and be able to do it anonymously so that your name's not out there in the forefront. If you're Shohei Ohtani and you decide you want to get down and get some action in, you probably don't want a bunch of people to know about it, and you want to be able to move large amounts of money, probably larger amounts than what you'd be able to do at a casino or definitely through your DraftKings or BetMGM app or whatever app you're using. You can move larger amounts of money and be able to get the action in that you want. Also, you may have access to different sports or more things than what those books offer. So this bookmaker, although he's not allowed to do it, would allow you to be able to do more things and also be able to fly under the radar so no one else knows what's going on. That's why you would utilize a guy like that if you're Shohei Ohtani, if in fact he was gambling. I have to admit, I thought the interpreter, the way he communicated for Ohtani and the way that he appeared to be at the press conference, I thought it went well for Ohtani. Much better than what I thought it would be. And I came out of that thinking, yeah, maybe it is possible that his interpreter stole the money and he had no idea. I think that's possible. Now, last week on Friday, Brenden Lang, who is a well-known handicapper and he's been around the gambling business for a long period of time, he came on my show in the afternoon to discuss the NCAA tournament. I didn't even ask him about Ohtani, and this is what he offered up to me during the course of that conversation.
And by the way, I'll break the story to you. It wasn't the interpreter. It was Ohtani. And every single Major League Baseball player is sitting back laughing going, you think we're buying the interpreter, bro? It was you, bro. It was you. And I have 100% factual evidence that my boy, one of my best friends, who's a member of a club in L.A., is playing golf with Bauer the bookie 3 months ago. Bauer the bookie, my boy said to him, who's your biggest client? Who's the guy that owes you the most money? And Bauer looks at him and says, Ohtani, $22 million.
Wow.
Mouth to God's ears. Mouth to God's ears. So when they raided his home, they got his phone. Went in his phone, saw the exchange, and literally said, "What's this?" And Bauer said, "It's Ohtani. It's Ohtani. He gambles with my book, and he's down $22 million." And so they went to Ohtani's people and said, "Okay." And Ohtani people said, "Listen, you have no evidence whatsoever that he ever spoke to a bookie. He doesn't speak English, okay? It's his interpreter. His interpreter did it all, okay? You got nothing on him, nothing at all. Nothing to link him to the bookie that he placed a bet. It's the interpreter. The interpreter did it. He stole money. He did this. And the interpreter is the Lee Harvey Oswald. You know who's laughing the hardest right now? The League Baseball players. They're sitting back going, are you serious? Are you serious? You want to believe this 5'4" interpreter who looks like he should be a chef at Benihana's stole this guy's money? And by the way, you look at certain guys who are going to gamble $4 million. It ain't him. Does that guy really look like he's going to bet $4 million on sports?
No way. No way.
Never. In the history of mankind, never going to happen. So,
All right, let me ask you this. Do you think, because the real question is, do you think he got down on baseball? I mean, you've been around this for a long time. Your instincts, what does that tell you?
It was soccer. It was soccer and soccer only.
Okay.
That's another thing Bauer told my boy. It was soccer and soccer only.
How do you think the commissioner is going to handle this?
He's done. He's free and clear. The face of baseball is free and clear. The fall guy's the interpreter. Ohtani did nothing wrong. My golden child, who signed for $9 billion with the Dodgers, is free and clear. They can't charge him. They have no evidence that links him to the bookie. It's through the interpreter. So he stole everything from me. He had access to my accounts and he stole everything from me. That's like somebody saying I lost my ATM card and somebody took out $5,000 and I couldn't remember the code of my card, so I literally decided to write my code on the back so I can remember it.
All right, there's Branden laying on the Rip City Drive last week. Now, when you take that with a grain of salt, Branden brought it up himself. He would have no reason to lie about it, but he said that his buddy had a chance to be around Bowyer, the sports bookmaker down in SoCal, and he said that Ohtani was his biggest client. I mean, I would say this, that there are really a couple of different scenarios that I think are most likely. The one thing I am curious about in regards to the bookmaker, when it comes to the interpreter, I think his salary was somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 a year with the Angels and then the Dodgers as a interpreter for Ohtani, as a league employee. He was making a very good living as an interpreter, but $300,000 to $500,000 a year, while it's a good living, that doesn't equal bookmaker giving you a multi-million-dollar credit line. And that raises red flags in my mind, because if it's just the interpreter who's placing bets and it's not Ohtani, which means he's not a part of the picture, the interpreter isn't utilizing Ohtani's funds, then why would the bookmaker give someone like that type of credit line? Because what are the chances that a guy who's making $300,000 to $500,000 a year, how's he going to be able to pay you back if he owes you $4.5 million? How? And why would you take on that type of action as a bookmaker for a guy not making that much money? Because the idea is that you want to put yourself in a position to get paid so you can make a profit. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why would you do that? Now, if Ohtani was involved and you knew he was good to cover the bets, then of course, with that type of cash flow, you're going to take any type of bet that the guy wants to make. So what do you think are the most likely scenarios? You have what Ohtani is accusing Mizuhara of, and that's theft, and that's definitely possible. It seems unlikely because we're all very protective to a certain degree of our financial accounts, our banking information, everything. We always try to go through great lengths to protect our information in a day and age where people are trying to thieve stuff. But when it comes to a big name person, a high profile individual who's making a ton of money, maybe his interpreter, who was also a very good friend, maybe he had the power to go out to make decisions and handle the money for Ohtani to make things go, to make his life easier. Because when you're that big and you make that much money, you probably have a lot of different people in place to handle different types of business for you. You know, these situations you see where people have power of attorney to make decisions. That's definitely a possibility. The other situation I could see happening where you've got this bookmaker, you've got the interpreter, and the interpreter is running all of the action for Ohtani. Ohtani wants to keep his name out of it, doesn't want to be connected, and so all of the communication goes down between the interpreter and the bookmaker down in SoCal. Ohtani and his interpreter discuss what action they want. He's like, I like that game, and that game. And he gets the information to the bookmaker who takes the bets, knowing that Ohtani is good to cover it if they lose. I think that's a possibility. Guys like to gamble. Guys want to get down. And Ohtani probably thought, hey, I'm not betting on baseball, but I'm getting my action in. It's all going to be good until the feds start to do an undercover investigation and bust this guy. And then my name gets mixed up in it. That's definitely a possibility. I do find it a bit hard to buy that the interpreter stole the money and Ohtani had no knowledge of it. Like, I find that hard to believe. Probably because as you get older, you become a little jaded when it comes to people being honest all the time. I also think it is possible that Ohtani was like, don't worry, I'll take care of you. I'll cover your bets. Maybe his interpreter ran up a bill and he needed help and Ohtani wanted to step in. But once the feds, did their raid and his name was attached to it, they came up with plan B, which was to throw the interpreter under the bus to protect Ohtani's name. And I got to be honest with you, I'm not really offended by any of this. As long as Ohtani wasn't betting on baseball, then I don't have a big issue with what went down. He wants to get in on some action. You're allowed to bet on other sports. The only thing here that was a little bit questionable was involving yourself with a bookmaker who was running an illegal operation down in SoCal. But the feds aren't after Ohtani or anyone else placing the bets. They want to shut down the bookmaker and go after him. So I'm not really offended by that. And if Ohtani wanted to step up and cover the debts for his friend, I'm not bothered by that either. I mean, he's certainly welcome to do that if he's got a friend in need and he wants to help him out. I just think it's strange that the story did a 180 in a very short period of time. It's almost like Mizuhara talked to the investigative reporter. They came back to double-check the information, and that's when someone within Ohtani's team was like, this might be illegal. We could be in an issue here. And that's when they decided to change course. But as long as they weren't betting on baseball, it's not a big issue. For me, that is. It's different than Pete Rose, who was betting on baseball games as manager of the Reds. It's not even close to the same thing. But for baseball, fortunately, now that everything is pointed at the interpreter, we'll see what type of information comes out as the investigation continues, but they should be free and clear. And Ohtani can continue to be selective in what he wants to share because the investigation is ongoing, and then we'll see how things, continue on. And then Ohtani should be free and clear from having any type of big issues, unless, of course, other information was uncovered that there were games bet, especially if it was involving baseball games. That would be a disaster. All right, we'll come back, and I want to continue this discussion because I'll share a story that's related when it comes to athletes betting on games and a situation that's more concerning. Keith Smith will talk NBA at 8:20. Chad doing in for Justin Myers here on Rip City Mornings. All right, Chad doing in for Justin Myers. It's Rip City Mornings here, 6:45 on this Wednesday morning. Hope you're enjoying your Monday morning. You know, we're talking about Ohtani, and like I mentioned, I'm not really too concerned about the Ohtani story. As long as he wasn't betting on baseball games, if he wants to get down and get some action in, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with him wanting to bail out his, buddy if he was in trouble. And I feel bad for him if he was taken advantage of and his interpreter decided to thieve money from him. That'd be a tragedy. And what a fool. Because in that position is his interpreter making that type of cash and having access to the things you have access to. If he did do it and stole money from Ohtani, the guy's just an idiot. But that's what gambling addicts do. They will steal money from you. They will lie to your face over and over again, and it'll take money from you. So, if that happened, it's awful and it's crazy, but that's what gambling addicts do. And if you're moving that type of money, if you're a guy making $300,000 to $500,000 a year and you run up a $4.5 million tab, you've got a gambling issue. I know because I was that guy many years ago. Scary, absolutely scary. But at the same time, I don't have an issue with people that want to place bets because most people can do it responsibly. They do it for entertainment or just to have fun or to make a game a little bit more exciting. But for me and for other people out there that have issues with it, they can't just do one game or just a couple of bucks or just for a good time. It consumes you. You want action and you need action and you do whatever you can to get it in. But this was a story that came up, and because it's not a big name, it's not getting the attention. But this is the type of issue that I would be more concerned about if I was the NBA, NFL, or Major League Baseball or any other sport, because now that gambling has been given over to the states by the feds, and you've got all these different states embracing sports gambling now because they see the revenue that can be generated by it, it's much easier access. You can do it legally. It's available through your phone. And a lot more people are thinking about gambling now and getting action in because it's available and it's legal. And we've got all these different sporting events which are on all the time. And you can bet on just about everything. But Jonte Porter, who is the brother of Michael Porter Jr., who plays for the Denver Nuggets. Now, Jonte is not a big-name NBA player, but he is under investigation right now. Jonte Porter, a forward who is on a two-way deal with the Raptors, and the brother of Denver Nuggets forward Michael Porter Jr. is under investigation by the NBA due to multiple instances of betting irregularities. ESPN was the first to report the news, and the NBA simply said in a statement to ESPN that the league is looking into it. The investigation is reportedly based on two Raptors games which took place on January 26th against the LA Clippers and on March 20th against the Kings. Ahead of the January 26th game against the Clippers, Porter's over-under prop bet totals were set at 5.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, and half a three-pointer. In Toronto's 11 previous games, all of which he played, Porter averaged 4.9 points, 3.4 rebounds, 2.2 assists, and just under 1 three-pointers, 0.7. In this game, Porter played 4 minutes before exiting due to what the Raptors called a re-aggravation of an eye injury suffered during a game on January 22nd against the Grizzlies. His final stat line for the Clippers game was 0 points, 0 threes, 1 assist, and 3 rebounds. The Raptors did not have a game between January 22nd and January 26th. The next day, according to ESPN, DraftKings Sportsbook reported that the under total on Porter's three-pointers was the biggest money winner among all NBA props from the night as part of a daily report to users on betting results. Porter did not attempt a single three-pointer in the Clippers game. When the Raptors next played on January 28th against the Hawks, Porter finished with 12 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, and 3 three-pointers in 19 minutes and 18 seconds of action. On March 20th against the Kings, a relatively smaller situation played out. Sportsbooks had Porter's props set at roughly 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds. Porter played 3 minutes, recorded 0 points and 2 rebounds, and left with what the Raptors called an illness. Again, the next day, DraftKings reported that Porter props were the number one moneymaker from the night of NBA games. Notably, the Raptors were remarkably shorthanded for that March 20th game. Scotty Barnes, R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Jakob Poeltl, and Chris Boucher were all out. which would have suggested more shots and playing time were available for reserves like Porter. At least one other U.S. sportsbook detected unusual betting interest on these prop bets. According to ESPN's reporting, with one source telling them that multiple betting accounts were attempting to bet large sums upward of $10,000 and $20,000 on Porter unders. This would far exceed the typical prop betting limit of $1,000 to $2,000. Quote, people were trying to do whatever they could to bet on Jonte Porter props against the Clippers, a source told Adrian Wojnarowski. And then just a few days ago, the same thing. We had a bunch of people trying to get the under bets in for more. So there you go. That's the type of situation I'm concerned about. If Ohtani wants to get down on soccer, maybe that's one way to make soccer exciting, is to bet millions of dollars on a soccer match. Maybe then I would watch it if I knew that my entire life was riding on the game. But that's what I'm concerned about. Now that gambling is more prevalent and players have access to this through their apps, their family members, their friends, those are the type of things I'm concerned about, where players could give up information either knowingly or unknowingly, and then all of a sudden you have other people piling on trying to get their piece of the pie. That, to me, is a great concern. And I don't know what you do to slow it down. I guess what you have to do as a league is you've got to continue to drive it into these guys' heads that you cannot bet on NBA games or MLB games or NFL games if you're a player. You can't do it. You just can't do it. And if you do, the punishment's going to be severe. And they've got to make sure the punishment is severe to keep this away from the game. Because the one thing you don't want, Ohtani betting on soccer, if that's all it was, or even Ohtani betting NFL games or NHL games or whatever, as long as it's not baseball, there's not a conflict of interest. But if you have a basketball player like Porter and all of a sudden there's irregularities on Jonte Porter unders, first of all, how many people know that Jonte Porter is a player that plays in the NBA? How many people know that Michael Porter Jr. has a brother that's on a two-way deal? My guess would be hardly anybody.
Very few, Chad.
Very few. So, of course, they're going to sniff this out right away. These companies are so smart at tracking all the bets that come in and anything that looks a little bit odd, like Jonte Porter unders. Wait a second, action on who? Why are all these bets coming in on Jonte Porter? And as soon as they see it, they sniff it out, they talk to the league, and boom, you got an investigation. But the reason why you don't want that to go down, and the reason why I think that's a worse situation than what you have with Ohtani, is because anytime you have a player that's involved in a game who's betting on that game, it questions or brings into question the integrity of the game. And you don't want any type of activity that would mess with the fabric of the game. So that's a greater concern to me than Ohtani. But again, this is part of the fallout when you have the majority of states in the country embracing gambling. There's going to be good things that come out of it in terms of revenue generation, but there's also going to be issues and fallout because it's so easily available through your phone, your computer, whatever. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Keith Smith going to join us at 8:20. Chad doing in for Justin Myers. It's Rip City Mornings. All right, last night in the NBA, the Lakers down 19 with under 8 minutes to play. They come back and top the Bucks 128 to 124 in double overtime. Austin Reeves a triple-double. Anthony Davis a monster night. 34 points, 23 rebounds. He played 52 minutes. The Lakers have won 4 straight. Trailblazers continue their 7-game road trip tonight. They'll be in Atlanta to meet the Hawks. Tip-off at 4:30. Game day will start at 2 here on 620 Rip City Radio. From the NFL owners' meetings this week, it's brought some changes. The league will have 2 scheduled games on Christmas Day, Wednesday for the 2024 season. Coaches will now get a third challenge, which is one successful challenge, and the league will adopt the USFL-style kickoff rules to increase returns after 1,970 touchbacks last season. Kentucky AD Mitch Barnhart confirms John Calipari will return as coach after being knocked out in the first round by Oakland. Keith Smith going to talk NBA with us at 8:20. All right, Keith Smith going to come by and talk NBA coming up at 8:20. I got to be honest with you, too. I feel a little bit like Shohei Ohtani. I need to do a better job of keeping track of my finances. I just re-upped my daughter's lunch account at school for another $100. And I just did this like 2 weeks ago. And so I finally had a little conversation with Kaylee last night. I'm like, hey, sweetheart, I just put $100 in your lunch account 2 weeks ago. Why am I needing to put more money in your account right now? And why am I getting messages from the school saying that you have a negative lunch account of balance? So I went in, and I normally don't track this stuff, but I was alarmed at the rate at which she was spending money on food at school. And so I looked through the transactions, and I'm like, it was eye-opening. I felt like Ohtani for a moment. It was like negative $8, $8, $12, $15. And I'm like, in one day? Why on earth does anyone in the 8th grade need to spend $15 at school on lunch? What are they serving? Who's supplying the food? Is it like El Gaucho Wednesdays at Kingsway? So I'm about to lose my mind. And so I'm like, Kaylee, sweetheart, and I have to be careful how I approach my daughter because, especially as a talk show host, I get accused of yelling a lot. And I'm like, I'm not yelling, I'm just talking. When you have a microphone in front of your fat face all day long, you talk loud. I've got a radio voice. I talk loud. But I try to be very gentle with how I communicate with my daughter because she's a sweetheart. And I love her, and I don't want her to be upset because I'm trying to ask her questions. So I rolled in with a very casual approach because I wasn't upset. I was just alarmed at what was going on. So I'm like, honey, I noticed that you have these deductions over the course of the last couple of weeks. I said, I know that school lunch doesn't cost anywhere near that for yourself. What are you buying? And that's when she proceeded to tell me that sometimes she buys lunch for her friends. Sometimes she likes to buy them snacks or soda. And what she was doing basically was supplying her friends with the food that their parents won't allow them to eat. Meaning she's got a couple of friends who their parents try to limit the amount of soda they drink or the amount of sweets that they have. So Kaylee was supplying them with soda and sweets on her lunch account to make sure that they were happy. And she said she was just trying to be a good friend. And I'm like, I hate that because it's like, I can't be upset because she's trying to take care of her friends. But then I had to have the whole conversation about, look, honey, I'm glad you want to take care of your friends. And I'm happy that you have such a giving heart to use my money to be able to do that. But you've got to understand that parents, when they have specific dietary desires for their kids, they don't want somebody else stepping in and supplying them with soda pop, candy, cookies, or whatever else you're buying for them. And so I had to explain that in the nicest way. But yeah, it was like $15 at school on lunch. What's going on here? So anyways, we had that conversation, but I felt in a way like Ohtani. I didn't authorize that, but yet my daughter's using my money to supply her friends with all of their needs. So I thought that was pretty funny. we'll get to Scoot. I've got this guy. This kind of stuff drives me crazy, and I'll probably get to this coming up at 7:20. But this is the type of stuff that gives me a headache, and this goes back to what I was talking about with my teams in sports not being very good right now. Is that it leads to ridiculous conversations. We can all agree that Scoot Henderson has not had the type of year as a rookie that we all hoped he would have. It has been underwhelming when you compare it to the hype that he had coming out of the G League Ignite. But I've got this guy right now. His name is Scott Bever on Twitter. I think it's Bever, Bever. And I think Scott's a Trailblazer fan, but he has been very unhappy with the play of Scoot in his rookie season. And he is now letting me know that Delano Banton is a better NBA prospect than Scoot, which, of course, is ridiculous. Delano Banton has been terrific since he came over at the trade deadline in that deal with Boston. He's been aggressive. He's been able to score. He's coming off a game in which he put up 28 points. He's had some big nights for the Trailblazers. But a lot of his nights, his high-scoring nights, have come on a high volume of shots. Not the most efficient player on the planet. I don't know what Delano Banton is, but he's making the most of the time he's had in Portland to be able to showcase what he can do for the Trailblazers or potentially another team in the NBA where he can latch on and have a career. But in no way, shape, or form is he at the level or the type of prospect that Scoot is. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Delano Banton, at best, is a role player in the NBA. Scoot has the potential, the talent to become a franchise-type player. We just haven't seen it yet. But this is the type of conversations you have when your team is bad or when draft picks don't live up to the expectations immediately based on what we've been told. And that's part of the frustration. But no, I do not think that Delano Banton is a better prospect than Scoot. I don't at all. He's been tossed around the NBA so far. Props to Delano Banton for making the most of his opportunity in Portland. The best part about a team like Portland that's going through a transition and through a rebuild is that it opens up opportunity for the youngsters to play or journeymen to come in when you have guys who are out of the lineup, out of need, out of necessity, and you come in, you're making the most of it, and you showcase what you can do, and then hopefully you latch on somewhere else. But the one thing I'll get to, Sean Hyken from the Rose Garden Report joined me yesterday. There is no doubt that this upcoming offseason and transition into year number 2, it could not get any bigger for Scoot Henderson. He has got to make a major jump and a major leap from year 1 to year 2 in terms of his play, his decision-making, his decisiveness. His overall game has got to dramatically improve because the Trailblazers are in a tough spot right now where they're trying to take a look at what they have and know who's going to be a part of the future. And they've got a 3-guard situation right now with Shaden, Ant, and Scoot. And at some point, they're going to have to choose between 2 of the 3. They're not going to be able to move on long-term with all 3, and they're going to have to be able to make a decision. So this is going to be a big offseason for Scoot Henderson to work on his game and to get his body right. And with the understanding of what it means to be an NBA player coming off the rookie season, then you move in to the offseason, you work on that, and you come back, and hopefully you're ready to hit the ground running for year number 2. Big offseason for Scoot. But please, can we slow down on the Delano Banton hype? Really? We see this happen all the time. Guys come in, journeymen, they get a chance to play on a team that's going through a rebuild or a team that's, playing out the string or that's been ravaged by injuries. And because of that, they get a bunch of shot attempts. And just because you put up 28 points or you put up 28 points and 11 rebounds and record your first double-double in your NBA career, that does not necessarily translate into great success. My biggest concern about Scoot would be just the overall adjustment to the NBA game. I don't know if it's because he just wasn't prepared for it or if the G League competition he was up against just wasn't anywhere close to what we see in the NBA, or maybe the fact that he's just young at 19 years old. There's so many factors. Bottom line is I'm not freaked out yet with Scoot. Now, if he goes into the offseason and puts in the work and comes back and we're having the same conversations at this point next year, I'll be freaked out. Because if you want the Blazers to be good relatively soon, he needs to work out. It would be a disaster if Scoot Henderson does not pan out and become a big-time player. Because through a rebuild, there's no guarantee they're going to get another pick that high in the draft. So when you get a chance to pick in the top 5, or at number 3, you got to make sure you hit on that guy. So they need Scoot to work out. So if you're a Blazer fan, you want Shaden and Scoot to hit, to cash in. You want the Blazers to know that they've got their backcourt locked up for the future, and that's going to make this whole rebuild a lot easier. But if Scoot doesn't work out and you have to move on from him, then that's going to be an issue. Or what if Shaden Sharp doesn't work out? You don't need these guys to not hit. That's a disaster. You don't want to be in this long cycle of rebuild and looking for draft picks. You need to hit on as many of those guys as possible. Now, the key is to continue to acquire those type of assets so you can bring in more players until you find the ones that are going to be a part of the future. And the Blazers will have that this offseason. They got 2 picks in the first round, their pick and the Warriors' pick. They'll have 2 picks in the second, and they've got some pieces that they can move during the offseason to, bring a little more continuity to the roster. Malcolm Brogdon being at the top of that list. So, but no, Delano Banton, like him, but is he a better prospect than Scoot? No. Is he a better NBA player than Scoot? Probably not. Is Delano Banton a future starter in the NBA? Probably not. But it doesn't mean he can't carve out a role for himself. I mean, he's showing himself to be much better than what he did with Toronto or Boston. He can score a little bit. He can get to the free throw line. He's got unique length and a much stronger body for a guy who's so lanky, which is interesting. All right, let's go out to the phones. I believe my man Mitch in New Jersey is on. Let's talk to him. Mitch, welcome back to the show, my friend. What's going on this morning?
Good, Chad. How you doing? Glad you're on. I think morning's the best time. That's my opinion. It's the right time. Sorry, it's a little earlier for you. But you'll get used to it if you had to be mornings. First of all, boy, the Dodgers really have some pickings. I mean, if there's any punishment for Shohei Ohtani, I hope they defer it, okay? Boy, there's Yamamoto. He got rocked in his first start. Didn't have a good spring. You know the deal with Trevor Bauer? That was another bust. I think Corey Seager, he's going to win the MVP, irregardless of Mr. Judge there, who they missed on him. And then Juan Soto, another guy they missed. Harper's another guy that might get MVP. Dodgers didn't want to pony up for that. Now they have this guy, Shohei Ohtani. I don't know. It's real funny. But, and by the way, I brought Jonte Porter. He's got a brother. He's entering the transfer portal. Pepperdine Waves, 6'11", Javon Porter. I hope he's not gambling. I hope he's going to take after Michael, not Jonte. The family comes from money. I don't understand why people gamble. When you come from money, you're in the upper class. You're rich. Right?
That's true. I think people gamble because they want the action, and it's exciting. And they look at it as a situation to take the money that they have and double that money. So people who gamble or people that gamble big numbers, yeah, that's a whole different train of thought there. But don't worry about the Dodgers.
They're find the right woman.
Hey,
yeah.
Hey, Mitch.
Didn't Ohtani got married during the middle of the night or something like that? Go find the right woman, the perfect woman, who you're going to have to trust, Get it signed for nuptial. That might not be so easy. Easier said than done, right?
Hey, Mitch, I've been looking for the right woman for the last 35 years of my life. It hasn't happened yet. I don't think that's an easy find either. But don't worry about the Dodgers. Look at this projected lineup you're going to have this year. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Teoscar Hernandez, James Outman, Jason Hayward, and Gavin Lux. I think they're going to be just fine.
I think so, but it would have been better with Corey, Cody. There's only 2 homegrown talent on that team, 2 homegrown players, and Lux is still an iffy. He's still an if. They had him moving to second base even before the season started. But Mookie's a Hall of Famer, so is Freddie. I think sure Ohtani will be a Hall of Famer, and hopefully Clayton Kershaw and him can pitch next year together.
Well, Mitch, all I can tell you is that you're a Dodger fan, you got nothing to worry about. That lineup's going to be awesome. Anything short of winning a World Series this year for the Dodgers would be a disaster. They are legit, and they're going to be fun to watch. That's part of why I want this story to go away. I don't want Shohei Ohtani to not be on the field. That lineup's going to be great. I'm excited about Dodger baseball this year because of that lineup. Mookie Betts is one of my favorite players in baseball, and Freddie Freeman is one of the coolest dudes on the planet. And you throw in Ohtani, yeah, they're going to be nasty. Going to be nasty. Yeah, you're right. Yamamoto did not have a good spring, did not look good in his debut. It just didn't work. But they're going to be just fine. All right, we'll talk NBA Keith Smith coming up at 8:20. I want to get to Coach Prime, and we're going to talk and focus in on Scoot Henderson, who is getting ready for a huge offseason. Chad doing in for Justin Myers at Rip City Mornings. All right, Sean Highkin, Rose Garden Report, joined me yesterday, and we were talking about Scoot Henderson. And I want you to listen to this exchange because it deals with Scoot, his current play, the struggles, and how big this upcoming offseason is.
I think this is going to be a huge offseason for him, and I think it's going to be good for him to have a normal offseason where you have to remember last year, he goes right from going through the pre-draft process to as soon as he gets drafted by Portland, then suddenly Damian Lillard requests a trade, and then, he's kind of in the middle of that whole situation, even though it really doesn't have anything to do with him personally. And then, he goes to Summer League, and he has a shoulder injury in the first half of the first game of Summer League, doesn't play the rest of the way. And then, he goes into, his first NBA season, and he gets kind of, schooled in his first game ever against the Clippers. And then it's all kind of up and down from there. He's had the injuries to deal with. I think it's going to be good for him to just now go into an off season thinking, okay, I know, what an NBA season is like now. I don't know if he's going to play again at Summer League. I don't think it would be the worst idea in the world if he wanted to. I don't think the organization would be against it if he decided he wanted to. And knowing him, I think he'll probably want to, even if it's just for a couple of games, just to show that he doesn't need it and that he's above it at this point. But so that's going to be interesting. And if he can just get through a whole off season of, not having a setback like that shoulder injury and then having a whole summer to just kind of now he knows what goes into an NBA season and the physicality and the, rigors of the 82 game schedule and all that, then I think there's certainly the organization. I think the sentiment that I've gotten from, people in the organization on Scoot is that I don't know if they expected it to be this rough, but I think they were kind of realistic about the fact that 19-year-old point guards are basically never good right away, except for like Kyrie Irving and Derrick Rose. And that's like basically it. You look at, De'Aaron Fox really struggled his rookie season. Darius Garland, you can name so many guys that ended up being all-stars later on. And so I think if he's still playing at the level he's playing at right now, a year from now, then I think people are going to start to worry. But I do think, and to your point, Chad, what you said about what we know about his work ethic and the way that he approaches these things, I think everybody involved feels pretty good about that. What has happened this season is not just, automatically, this is just what he is as an NBA player.
Hey, Sean, how does it work with a team? Scoot, I think his workout guy, I think his coach might be his dad. I'm assuming that in their exit interviews, the team will go to the player and have different things that they want them to work on and communicate that to the player. And then what do? They can take that information and then work with their own team. How does that process work out or play out?
I mean, I think all that kind of varies, player to player, team to team. There are some guys that work with different. There were certain, trainers like, Damian Lillard's guy was Phil Beckner, who also worked with Anthony Simons and Mikal Bridges and other guys. Like everybody kind of has their own process. And from what I've heard, I think the Blazers organization's attitude is, who guys work with in the off season isn't really their business or their jurisdiction. And so I don't think they would step in and say, oh, I don't think it's good that your dad is working out, is your trainer in the off. I don't think that's something that they would do unless there was a clear problem with something. But I don't know. That's going to be something that I'll be kind of interested to see how this summer goes for Scoot on a lot of levels.
Yeah, because I'm not concerned about Scoot yet, based on everything that you just said. But if we're at this point next year and the same issues, and we haven't seen that jump, I mean, there would be major concern at that point, right?
I would say so. Yeah, I think people expected a lot of growing pains and struggles for a player as young as him trying to learn this position. But yeah, if it's still like this near the end of his second season, then yeah, I think at that point there would be some reason to worry about it. But we're a long ways away from that.
All right, Sean. All right, there's Sean Highkin talking about Scoot Henderson. So basically, what it comes down to is there's definitely concern about the way he's played in his rookie season, but not panic yet. He just has a lot to improve upon and improve as an NBA player. And that's why this offseason is critical. Next year is going to be massive for Scoot. And that means he's got to finish out this year. He's going to get a ton of run. The other thing that Highkin pointed out is that of all the guys who are banged up right now, Anthony Simons might be the most likely candidate not to return. I don't think the knee injury is serious, but it's going to keep him off the floor for a little bit of time. But maybe now with, 10 or 11 games left, maybe the best thing to do is just let Ant rest so he can get his body 100% and right. So that way you open up even more time for Scoot to be on the floor, to be the main initiator of the offense, and just to get more run, as many minutes as possible, because it's critical. His development is one of the most important things for this franchise right now. And then when the season's over, he'll meet with the team. They'll offer up suggestions for what he should focus on, and then he'll go into the offseason and know exactly what needs to be done. Now, from my understanding, his dad is his coach and his main guy that works with him on his game. And I don't care if it's his dad or his brother or anybody else. Just make sure that whoever you're working with is the right guy to get you to the next level. That's all I care about. If it's your dad, then work with your dad. If it's somebody else, then don't spare any expense or time necessary to be able to get it right. Because for Scoot Henderson, if he goes into the offseason, applies himself, and comes back and takes that major step in year 2, then everyone can breathe a big sigh of relief and move forward knowing that they're going to be just fine. But if we're sitting here at this time next year and Scoot's still having the same issues, uncertain on the floor, unable to figure out his footwork in the paint, leaving the floor too early, not finishing at a high rate around the rim, and his three-point shooting continues to struggle, then the panic button should be hit. And the problem is the Blazers are going to have to make a decision on 2 guards. They've got 3 guys right now, Shaedon Sharpe, Ant, and Scoot. You can't have all 3 guys on the roster forever. They're going to need to make a decision by trade deadline next year or by the end of next season. And they'll have to make a decision on what to do. Do we keep Scoot and Shaedon? Do we move on from Ant? Do we move on from Scoot and keep Ant and Shaedon? They're going to have to make that decision because you can't pay all 3 guys. Now, normally what happens is when you get a new regime in this case, Joe Cronin, and of course his right-hand man is Mike Schmitz. When you draft players and you invest in them and you develop them, you're normally going to give them every chance to fail because it's really hard for guys to give up on the players they draft, especially one that's taken number 3 overall. What I'm trying to say is that if you're Scoot Henderson, you want to make sure that it's clear that you are going to be a big-time NBA player. And it has to happen now. He needs to put in the work and come back ready next year and take that big jump. So, again, I'm not panicked yet. There's been a lot of things working against him. One, he's coming in from the G League, and let's face it, the competition and the chaotic nature of G League basketball is nowhere near the NBA level. So you play against NBA guys, it's different than going up against G League scrubs, especially the bigs, because the 4 and the 5s don't move the same. All of a sudden, you get to the NBA, and the 4s and the 5s move at a rate that you've never seen before. So there's an adjustment period. Plus, the G League is geared more towards guard play, and all of a sudden, you hit the NBA, and it's structured. So that's an adjustment. Then he started out his year with the bone bruise and missed a significant period of time. He's been in the starting lineup. He's come off the bench, and the lineup has been a mixed mash of players all year long because there's been no continuity. That works against him as well because you're on the floor with different guys. You're in a different role. You don't have any continuity or connection with the players you're playing with, and that makes it difficult. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying it's been a mess of a year for a first-year player at 19 to enter the league and be a point guard. So hopefully next year the Blazers can have an environment where, 1, there's better continuity, 2, much more consistency within the lineup so Scoot can really start to develop that connection with the guys he's on the floor with. And then they'll be able to have a better understanding of what they have. And right now, I don't think they know. I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that this year has been a major disappointment. Most of that comes from the hype. We get this with quarterbacks in the draft all the time. You know, a guy comes out, he's supposed to be the next big thing, the next Joe Montana, and the expectations are so high that even if they have a good career, it's nowhere near what everyone thought it would be, and they're considered a bust. But for Scoot Henderson, he needs to put in the time and come back ready to roll next year. And for the Trailblazers and the health of the franchise, that is a player you cannot miss on. He needs to cash in. You need him to rise up and show that he can be the man. Now, the good thing working for Scoot is, by all accounts and the people I've spoken with and anyone around the team, they all say the same thing. He is very coachable, so he listens to Coach Billups and the staff, and he's willing to be coached hard, which is great. He does not walk around with this idea that he's already got this and understands that. He's very receptive to coaching, and he puts in a lot of time individually on his game. He approaches the film work very seriously, and he's taken everything in stride this year through the struggles. So his attitude and his demeanor has been proper, and he puts in the time. And when you have those type of God-given abilities and you're willing to put in the time and spend the work necessary to get the job done, that's going to put you in a good spot. But it's going to be critical for him to make that big jump from year one to year two. And I also think the age does have something to do with it. 19 years old. 19 years old. And there are guys, De'Aaron Fox, and I think it's Colin Sexton. Dan Marang was showing me this the other night on Saturday during the Nugget game. If you look at the numbers of those three guys at this same point in their career, they're almost identical. And both those guys took a major jump in their NBA careers. There have been late bloomers at point guard before. Steve Nash, Gary Payton, other guys who came in the league with all kinds of expectations, but it took a couple of years to get things going. So we'll see how it shakes out. But the key is for the Trailblazers, they've got to make sure that they foster the right environment for that thing to happen because they need him to work out. They need him to become big time. But you can see the struggles in the game. Part of it could be the rookie wall, but when he's on the floor, especially over the last couple of weeks, there's been some indecision, especially when he gets into the paint, turnover issues, all the things that you would expect to see from a youngster. But big offseason for Scoot. And for the Trailblazers, right now the number one key is player development. Shaedon Sharpe, it looks like he's ramping up. He's with the Rip City Remix. I would expect him to play before the end of the year, which would be critical. He's missed a ton of time. It'd be great to get him on the floor and get some more burn before the offseason. Malcolm Brogdon, I don't expect him to come back, but Sean pointed out that for the Trailblazers, Brogdon's had a elbow issue, the tendonitis. And it's not a fake injury. It's actually legit. He got PRP injections into the elbow. I asked Sean, what would be the benefit for the Trailblazers of having a veteran Brogdon back on the floor before the end of the season? And it's very simple. He's expected to be moved during the course of the summer because he's only going to have 1 year left on his deal. And obviously the Trailblazers with three guards they got to make a decision on. They're not going to offer Brogdon a new contract. So he's going to be moved. I'm almost 100% certain on that. If he comes back on the floor and gets a chance to play before the end of the season, at least he can show that, hey, my elbow's okay. I'm going to be all right. And then the Blazers will be in a position to move him during the summer. So Brogdon would be right at the top of the list of guys who are going to be moved out. So, we'll see. We'll see how things continue to work. I do believe, based on what I hear, I expect Chauncey Billups to be back next year. I'm perfectly okay with that because I think Chauncey's doing a good job with the young guys in terms of development. Look at what we've seen over the last couple of games with the 5 rookies starting. We've seen good production. Dewap Reef has been a find and has played very well for them. Tamani Kamara is coming along. Started out the year as a defensive stopper, but his offensive game has gotten better, and he's improved as a playmaker. Chris Murray has shown some flashes throughout his increased playing time. So I like the way the staff has worked with the young players. And, for the Blazers right now, I just don't think coaching or making a coaching change is at the top of the priority list. Right now it's about player development and then taking a look at the roster and continuing to have an idea of what you're going to have long term or who's going to be here in 3 years, and then making the moves to bring more balance to the roster. And then hopefully they'll have some good fortune with the NBA lottery this year so they can have access to maybe a guy like Czar. So we'll see. But this is the process. It's all about player development and continuing to put yourself in a position to have the assets necessary to bring in the players you need to get this turnaround going in the right direction. So I don't know. But next year, I'll be watching Scoot with a lot of care because they need him to hit. Oh, my goodness. That's where we're at. And for Scoot, going to be a big offseason. All right, we're going to talk NBA with Keith Smith, who's going to join us. He's going to come up at 8:20. We'll talk about the playoff race. I want to ask him about the Celtics. He's really tied in with Boston. Get his take on the Western Conference. Who can challenge Denver? I do want to get to Coach Prime. I'm a big fan of Deion Sanders, but he said some things recently that I thought were crazy. It's like, hey, man, slow your roll, Coach. I don't know if you're capable of that, but please slow your roll. And the NFL draft, I'm intrigued by the quarterbacks. It looks like 4 guys are going to go in the top 6. The question is, what order and who's going to be the 4th guy? And what does that mean for Bo Nix and Michael Penix? Chad doing in for Justin Myers. It's Rip City Mornings. All right, Worldwide Wednesday coming up here in just a moment. I have received a number of tweets with different people asking questions. I'll address all of those coming up at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock, most of them surrounding the Trailblazers and the upcoming offseason. So I want to get to those. Dan in Newburgh. My man Scotty Bethune has chimed in. Scott Bever has replied in response to Scoot and Delano Banton. And Larry Miller's got a question in regards to the Trailblazers as well. So I will get to that coming up at 8 o'clock. We'll talk NBA with Keith Smith at 8:20. I'm sitting in for Justin today, and I'll be back in on Monday as Justin enjoys his vacation. Chris Burkhart will be in tomorrow and on Friday. Double duty today for me. So I've got Rip City mornings, and then I'm going to go work out. And then after that, I'm heading over to Moda Center for the Trailblazers Radio Network. Chris Burkhart will have game day. And then I'll be back tomorrow with the Rip City Drive. All right, let's do it. Worldwide Wednesday, my friends. All right, Brenden has supplied me with a few stories. And this first one here, Brenden, is pretty scary. And this goes back to my philosophy on life. As I've gotten older, the one thing I do not do is swim in large body of waters if I cannot see the bottom and I don't know what is in there. Like, I'm not going to jump in the ocean. I'm not going to jump in a lake. And this is a perfect example. A fisherman at a lake in northeast Tennessee caught a surprise at the end of his line when he pulled in a 4-foot-long alligator. And according to the report from the AP, alligators are not native to that part of Tennessee and are considered Class 1 wildlife species, which are those that are inherently dangerous to humans and may only be possessed by permitted exhibitors or commercial propagators. So this is ridiculous, but this is what happens with these idiots. All right, I had a buddy, Corey, when I was in high school, and he lived right up the street, and we were great friends. And he said, hey, you got to come up. I got to show you something. So I went up to his house, and he lived down in this basement, and he had this water feature down there I'd never seen before. I go down there, and I'm like, what in the world's going on? And he's like, look. And I looked in there, and there's this little mini alligator in there. And he brought out a goldfish, and he dropped that thing in the water with the gator, and the gator just sat there for a moment, and out of nowhere, just bam, and it was lunch. And I was like, you know what? I don't need that in my life. I don't want that in my life. But this is what happens. People buy these exotic animals thinking it's a good idea, like somehow it's going to be like the family dog. And then all of a sudden they start to grow and realize how dangerous it is. You know what they do? They take it out and release it in the wild. And that's why we have Florida man and the Everglades destroyed by the pythons that are eating everything in sight. Because people buy the exotic pet and they release it in the wild.
100%. Actually, for what it's worth, Chad, it's kind of funny to see this story because I actually, as you know, just went to Florida a couple weeks ago. Second time I've been, didn't see an alligator or crocodile. So these eyes still haven't seen one. So I'm like, okay, I gotta see one to believe it. But as you know, I like to swim. I like to be in the rivers here in Oregon in the summer. Really like being in water. I see this little critter. I mean, it's not, a full-size grown one, Chad, but I'm messing around with that gator, man.
No, it's a small one, 4 foot, but it's still big enough to take a chunk out of your leg.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to lose my foot by just, dipping my toe in the water.
No, and being in a river here in Oregon is a little bit different than jumping in a giant lake. I don't know what's down there.
This is true. This is very true.
You can't tell me that you know what's down there when you can't see the bottom. Murky water. I don't need that. I don't need oceans either. I know there's sharks in there. I don't want one of those things getting a hold of me. Now, this got to be damaging for you, Brenden, but apparently Costco is making some changes, and I think this is a dumb idea. But someone took to Reddit to post a picture of a sign posted at their local Costco. It says, effective April 8th, 2024, an active Costco membership card will be required to purchase items from our food court. You can join today. Please see our membership counter for details. And, of course, the reason why people go to Costco to hit the food court is because it's home of the $1.99 pizza slices and the hot dog that's been priced at $1.50 with the drink combo forever. Now, I know you're a big fan of this, are you not?
This Costco's clutch, man. Gotta say, like you said, the prices that haven't changed in probably 30, 40 years. And we got a Costco membership in the family, but yeah, I've kind of seen they've slowly but surely, Chad, started to crack down on things. Like a year and a half ago, it was now they really need to see your card when you walk into Costco. You can't just like flash it anymore. And then now it's move over to the food court, and they got to keep those prices for members only, man. I respect the game.
I don't. I think it's a mistake because what you do is by letting people in to access the food court, they're going to like you. And my guess is you can have a good chance to turn people over to get a membership, to become a Costco member. But if you preclude those people who are not members from coming in, you're going to miss out on that segment. I think it's a big miss.
It's definitely interesting to see if it honestly like pulls people towards memberships. I mean, Costco membership is what, $60 a year now? So it's one of those things where I think beyond just like the food court, like, Chad, if you have, more than just yourself, I don't know if a single person needs to have a Costco membership, but if it's more than just yourself, you're going to save money by shopping at Costco, no doubt.
All right. A lot of us like to go check out baseball games during the course of the season. I'm going to New York this year to catch the Dodgers and Yankees. I love being at the ballpark, but I'm thinking I should have gone to Chicago for a White Sox game. Check out some of the food additions they're going to have this year. Last Thursday, they sent out a list of some of the food experiences they're going to have. And according to their chief revenue and marketing officer, quote, one of the great things we're putting in this year is 2 different empanadas. We're serving a beef picadillo empanada topping with a fire-roasted salsa. We're also going to be serving Jack Daniels and Coke ice cream floats, which I'm sure during the summer months will be a big hit. And Ryan Craig, an executive chef with Levy Restaurants, said they're bringing in this year's food back to the team's deli roots with 5 sandwich options. There you go.
Yeah, that was probably the coolest story I found this morning, Chad, because I love food. As you know this, I love food. I love ballpark food. I love talking about food. And, just to say that sometimes it seems like outside of the great Pacific Northwest, we see the awesome food amenities that are at ballparks or what have you. And I remember we talked about what the Mariners offer, and Justin and I talked last week about how there's an all-you-can-eat pass coming up this year. I believe at Brewers games, where for $50 you can get like all-you-can-eat, soda, hot dogs, hamburgers, to go along with like your ticket, and there's like a price point for that. So
that's genius.
Yeah, I'm all for making these. Actually, it was the Marlins. Excuse me, the Miami Marlins. But I'm all for making fan experiences at ballparks or just stadiums in general better because, Chad, nowadays with all the amenities you have of watching a game at home, you've got to have something to draw in people. You know what I mean?
What is your go-to grub at a ballpark? What are you searching for? For me, I'm always in search of the best pretzel that I've ever had. That's my goal in life, is to discover where I can find the best pretzel.
Yeah,
I love
pretzel's tasty.
Fresh baked pretzels.
You a mustard guy or a nacho cheese guy with that pretzel?
I'm not doing the liquid cheese. I can't bring myself to do it because I want something that fits my lifestyle a little bit better, so I go mustard.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely with salt, too. If you order a pretzel without salt, you're a weirdo.
Psychopath behavior, right?
Yes.
Justin and I were talking about that, and he said the other day, he's like, that cheese, I have no idea what's in that cheese, nor do I want to know. So, good call there. But I'd say nachos. Nachos are kind of a good go-to. And I'm not talking, like you said, chips with the, yellow cheese on top and nothing else. I'm talking like real nachos. Like put some chicken on there. Like Moda does a great job with like their nachos that they have. I like a good nacho bar.
All right, finally, a North Carolina man stopped into a convenience store to buy a hot dog and walked out with a scratch-off lottery ticket worth $1 million. Franklin Bracey of Lincolnton told North Carolina education lottery officials he went to Jerry's One Stop in Iron Station to buy a hot dog, and while in the store, he decided to buy $10 worth of scratch-off tickets. He said, quote, I scratched it in my car. My first thought was, no way. Bracey's ticket revealed a $1 million prize. It blew my mind, he said. Bracey said he rushed home to tell his girlfriend about his good luck. Quote, first thing I said was, baby, sit down. And then he laughed. The winner said he plans to invest the prize money. I've never won anything over $100 before, he said. So there you go.
That's awesome.
I have never bought a scratch-it lottery ticket. Never done it. Have you ever done that?
Oh, yeah. In our household, Chad, they are common at Christmas time. Got to shove them in the stockings. So, yeah, I've been getting scratches for a long time. Never won more than $5, though.
All right, when we come back on Rip City Mornings, I will answer your questions that have flied in, and then I'll get to Coach Prime and his ridiculous comments, and then Keith Smith going to join us at 8:20. Chad doing in for Justin Myers. It's Rip City Mornings. All right, Trailblazers continue their 7-game roadie tonight. They'll be in Atlanta to take on the Hawks. Tip-off will be at 4:30. Game day will start at 2 with Chris Burkhardt here on 620 Rip City Radio. Pepperdine transfer Michael Ajayi announced on social media he's transferring to Gonzaga. The 6'7" wing was an all-conference player in the WCC, averaging 17 points, 9 boards, and connected on 47% of his threes. Sweet 16 gets underway tomorrow. First game up, Clemson and Arizona, a 2-6 matchup in the West. 4:09 tip on CBS. Kentucky AD Mitch Barnhart confirmed that John Calipari will return as head coach. From the NFL owners' meetings this week, the league is going to schedule 2 games on Christmas, which is on a Wednesday during the 24 season. Coaches now get a third challenge for getting one successful challenge, and the league will adopt the USFL-style kickoff rules to increase returns after 1,970 touchbacks last season. Keith Smith talking NBA with us coming up at 8:20. All right, we'll get to Coach Prime here in just a moment. Keith Smith, talking NBA coming up in 20 minutes. I got some questions that came in on Twitter. It's fun to come in the morning because, one, I get to see Brenden, and 2, I get a chance to communicate with a different audience because I know some of you that listen in the morning listen in the afternoons, but, you know, everyone's schedule is different. So I got some questions that came in. Let me address some of these. Dan in Newburgh reaches out and says, "Good morning, Chad. Listening to the show this morning, good to hear your voice. What are the chances that Brogdon gets moved during the draft to move up possibly? Does that work?" I think Brogdon's going to be moved. I don't think he'll be moved to move the Trailblazers up in the draft. For Brogdon, I think what you're looking at are future picks or a pick and a player. The one thing the Trailblazers need right now is, look, they've got enough young players, and I know they value young players around the NBA. What they don't need is a big grip of rookies, right? So if you can get future picks, I would think maybe a future pick and a player for Brogdon would be terrific. To be able to grab a player that you think can fit what you're trying to accomplish right now with this team, and then have another pick in the future that you can utilize as you continue this rebuilding process. Scotty Bethune reaches out and said, "Chad, you should have heard the stoke in my wife's voice when I told her I had won Lainey Wilson tickets." Scotty called in yesterday, and he won Lainey Wilson tickets. She's going to be up at the RVN Style Resorts Amphitheater on September 28th. So props to you, Scotty. And I'll have more of those tickets to give away on the Rip City Drive tomorrow. Scotty, also a big golfer. I have been spending a lot of money over the last couple of days getting everything in order. So I got all of my clubs re-gripped, and I went with a larger grip. I'm going with the Jumbos because I like the way they feel. And I had a chance to do some practice with the new grips last night, which was nice. I purchased a bunch of balls yesterday. I got my tees. I got my special consistent tees for driving. All the supplies are stocked. I am ready to roll. I'm just waiting for the end of the Trailblazer season, which is April 14th, and then my official golf season to begin on April 15th. I'm looking forward to it. Scott Bever, who was trying to convince me that Delano Banton is a better prospect than Scoot, chimed back in and said 6'3" versus 6'8". Does one have an advantage? We have had a lot of 6'3" guys. What does Danny always say? Taller, longer, stronger. Can't teach height. It's certainly not everything, and Scoot has a super strong build and is very quick. He lacks some court IQ. I hope they are both great options. Scoot has a chance to become the franchise player for the Trailblazers. More than likely, Banton is a career journeyman or a role player at best. But, you know, Banton is not going to become a viable starter in the NBA. That's just not him. I don't see that at all. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Banton. I just don't think he's that type of player. And I don't expect him to be here in Portland long term. But for Banton, what he's doing right now is making the most of the opportunity and putting himself in a position to where if it's not here in Portland, he can latch on with another team somewhere in the future. Larry Miller chimes in and says, "Hey, Chad, do you really think the Blazers will make a correct decision with their rotation next season based on their organizational ownership uncertainty?" Yes, I do. They don't have any uncertainty with ownership. Jody Allen is the owner. Burt Cold is in place. They two are working together. They know their roles, and there's no uncertainty. Do I expect them to sell at some point based on everything I've heard about the trust with Paul Allen? Yes. But there's no uncertainty with the Trailblazers right now. And the best part is they've got Joe Cronin in place. He's got his team assembled, and they're busy working the basketball side, trying to make the best decisions possible. And Joe Cronin knows this, and it's actually a good thing to have Joe Cronin in this spot. Joe Cronin knows that the team could be sold in the future. And that means that if a new owner were to buy the Trailblazers, usually a new owner is going to put the people he wants around him into place, which means Joe Cronin would probably be looking for a job elsewhere. That's usually what happens when a new owner takes over. They clean house and bring in their people. So Cronin, because of that, he knows he has to do the best job possible so that if ownership does change, that he's going to be a very marketable guy across the NBA. So it's in his best interest to make the best possible decisions with the roster. And he's going to be working hard to be able to do that. So I think they've got the right people in place. It's just a matter of going out there and executing. And they've got the ammunition now to do it. They're going to have to make some decisions with the roster to continue to clean up the cap, but they got off the big contract to Dame. They've assembled some assets in terms of draft picks and veteran players that they can move. So in terms of flexibility, this team's in a much better position they've been in years. Now it's just a matter of developing the young players that you have, determining which of those guys are going to be with you long term, and then continuing to utilize the assets that you have to go out and improve the roster. Those assets for this year would include 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. You have veterans that can be moved at some point, guys like Malcolm Brogdon, potentially Robert Williams in the future. Maybe it's Jeremy Grant in the future. But they're going to have guys on the roster who at some point in time could be utilized in a deal to continue to reshape what you want to do. So I actually like some of the assets they have in place to be able to make decisions, which is good. All right, I want to play this from Coach Prime. I love Coach Prime. I'm a big fan of Dion. I know a lot of you can't stand Dion. I don't care. I'm down with the guy. And I like him as a man because he got into coaching for what I believe was the right reasons. You know, he went to an HBCU school because he wanted to make a difference in the lives of young men. In fact, he's talked about this, but during the course of the pandemic and the social unrest in our country, he looked around at a lot of people on social media pointing the finger at everyone else and blaming everyone else for all the problems that were going on, but no one taking action. And that's usually how the world works, right? Few people take action. Most people complain and point fingers. And they tell you how things need to work, but they're not willing to do a darn thing because they're too self-involved. Well, Coach Prime was like, screw that. I'm going to stop worrying about all this. I'm going to go and make a difference in the lives of young men. So he went to the HBCU, did so, and did a heck of a job and got an opportunity to go to Colorado, where he is turning that program around. And he's got his son, Shador, who is playing at Colorado as quarterback, who's going to be one of the top picks in the draft next year, and also one of the guys that he recruited, one of the top players in college football, Travis Hunter. So I want to see Coach Prime succeed because I like him. And I'm anxious to see what the Buffs are going to look like this year. And I think Shadur's got a chance to become a very good NFL player. But he did have this to say about the upcoming draft next year. Let's take a listen.
Where do you predict Shador and Travis going in the draft?
Top 4.
Ooh, that's pretty beautiful.
Anywhere from 1 through 4. One of them is going to be 1. Yes. And the latter one would not go behind 4. I know where I want them to go. So there's certain cities that ain't going to happen.
Okay, you on point.
It's going to be it's going to be an Eli.
All right, there's Coach Prime. We're coming up on the 2024 draft, and it's going to be another year until Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are draft eligible. And you've got Coach Prime coming out already talking about a potential Eli Manning situation where if they don't like the team that's drafting at number 1 or at number 4, and Coach Prime is like a father to Travis. And he's already talking about pulling an Eli? I mean, come on, Coach. Is that really the type of approach you want to take right now? See, I was told this by Lorenzo Neal, who I worked with. He should be in the Hall of Fame, one of the best fullbacks of all time. And he was talking to me about coaches. And the one guy that he respected but told me that players had a problem with sometimes was Rex Ryan. And Rex Ryan's a very boisterous coach, likes to talk junk, always shares what's on his mind, has a big mouth. Great coach, but has a big mouth. And the one thing that his players did not like from time to time was that he would often say a lot of things that his players had to pay a price for on the field. And I feel like Coach Prime is doing the same thing to his guys sometimes at Colorado because he talks a big game. And I can understand why he's one of the best NFL players of all time. But you're not playing anymore, Coach. So every time you open your mouth, your players, your son Shadur, guys like Travis Hunter, are going to have to pay the price for all the mess you're talking. And I'm sure those guys are comfortable with going out there to back that up. But why put yourself in a position or your players in a position to have to deal with that? Plus, why send up any red flags to potential NFL teams that are going to be drafting and have a look at potentially drafting Shador or Travis? Why would you want to do that? And I think for Shador Sanders, look, I think things are going to work out for him this year. And I think he will be a top 5 pick in the draft next year because he's a quarterback and he's got a great skill set, but he's got a lot to prove. He did not have a good ending to the year last year in Colorado. Now, a lot of people will point to the roster and say it was due to talent, which is probably true, but he didn't play well down the stretch and didn't handle himself in the best way possible. So he needs to bounce back and have a big year and show that he can overcome. And I think Travis Hunter is probably just a better prospect. But the issue there is he's going to have to pick one side of the ball to play on. Is it going to be corner or are you going to be a receiver? Which one? You're not going to be able to do both in the NFL. I think what would be best for Coach Prime, I mean, you could talk about how your guys are going to go top 5. I'm fine with that. But don't start talking about how you're going to pick the destination or pull an Eli if you don't like the team that's going to be in a position to select your player. I just think it's a little bit too much too soon. Let those guys get out there on the field and prove that they're going to be bona fide top 5 picks in the NFL draft. And then you can start talking about the situation and what you want them to end up in. But I think it's too soon right now. But Coach Prime can't help himself sometimes. I can't relate to what it's like to operate on that level. Deion Sanders is one of the best football players I've ever seen in my lifetime. He is also one of the greatest athletes in the history of my life. So he operates on a different octane and is in a different stratosphere than I do, and I am. So he doesn't look at situations the way I do. He's a lot more confident man than I am, and he's done things at a level that most people can't relate to. Coach Prime's awesome, but it's okay to slow your roll just a little bit, Coach. I know you're Coach Prime. I know you're a Hall of Famer. I know you won multiple championships, but let these guys have a chance to go out there and grow and develop as players, and let this next season be put in the books before you start talking all the bad trash. And then you don't have such a big target on those guys' back. Because when other college players who don't have the same type of name, I mean, I still think that Deion's mouth and the way he ran it, I think got Hunter in a position to get cracked and caused injury to him against Colorado State. Just saying. So I like Coach Prime, but sometimes it's like, hey, dude, don't say that. You don't need to be talking about pulling an Eli. Come on now. All right, when we come back, we're going to dive into the NBA. Who is going to be challenging Denver in the West? Is Milwaukee going to pose any type of threat to Boston? Keith Smith is coming up next here on Rip City Mornings. All right, our next guest is one of my favorite NBA guys to talk to. He is with Spotrac and the front office show. He's on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA, and he's back on Rip City Mornings. Keith, long time no chat. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, I want to start out with the Boston Celtics. They were recently in town at Moda Center. I had a chance to see them play against the Celtics, and I was thoroughly impressed. And Coach Billups, after the game, said that they never get tired of playing the right way. They really seem to be a fine working operation right now. What's your take on where they're at as we get ready for the postseason?
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, they've kind of got everything you need. They have ball handling, they have playmaking, they have plenty of shooting, they have guys who can create their own look, and all their guys are very committed to defense and playing on that end of the floor as well. So that's why they've got the best record in the league. They've clinched almost everything there is to clinch so far. Well, we'll see. They're pretty close to wrapping up the overall best record, but there's still going to be those doubters out there until they do it. That's just kind of how it works. Until you break all the way through and get it done, people aren't going to believe you can. But I think this year is the best chance they've had since this group has come together.
How do you think Joe Mazzulla has changed in year two or adjusted to become a better coach? What are you seeing there?
I think he's a lot more adaptable now. I think a year ago it was a lot more, all right, this is what we do and this is how we're going to play. And if we don't, if it doesn't work, it just didn't work. And now I think this year you're seeing he is not afraid to pull guys. He trusts his bench a lot more. He's very willing to go to guys like Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett for long stretches. Part of their having the best record has been they've been able to spot a lot of guys rest days and the like, which is not something the NBA truly loves. But for the Celtics, their whole goal is let's be healthy and ready to go in a few weeks at the start of the playoffs. So everything with Mazzulla has just kind of worked. And he's also, I say more adaptable, but he's also committed to what he believes. He believes in the three-point shot and getting up a lot of shots and trying to win that variance game. And that's something that's been proven to be pretty successful.
Jason Tatum, through my eyes, appears to be a guy that is taking his game to the next level in terms of buying into the team concept and what they're trying to accomplish by working within the confines of the offense. Are you seeing the same thing, or what's going on with him? Because he appears to be really comfortable in what they're trying to do.
Yeah, you see it, especially at the start of games when they're whole, when they have like most, if not all of their guys available. Jason Tatum takes the approach that a lot of the very best scorers have had over the years in the NBA of, I'm going to let everybody else get going, and then there's going to come a time when it's time for me to get mine, and I will. And Joe Mazzulla does a good job of either Tatum or Brown plays the entire first quarter. It's usually Brown, and then they flips that in the second half, and it's usually Tatum plays the entire third quarter. But he makes sure that when the other guy does need to come out, then the other one is coming back into the game. He plays very few minutes without Tatum or Brown on the court, and that really works out well. And a big part of that is Jason Tatum he's not one of these guys who's like, nope, I need to be out there for 40-plus minutes. Of course, he'd like to be. But for the most part, he's basically made it as, hey, I'm going to play. I'm going to play as much as needed, and I'm going to set guys up. I'm going to be a playmaker because I know I can get mine when I need to.
We're talking with Keith Smith here on Rip City Mornings. Two more Boston questions for you. How much of a weapon is Sam Hauser? That guy can absolutely just drain it from downtown, and I'm wondering why more teams don't find a guy like that who can come off the bench and just shoot it really well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is a lot of the guys who can do that, they can't defend and they don't hold up defensively. Now, I'm not going to say Sam Hauser is making an all-defense team or anything like that, but all year long, and this is now year two of this, we see teams, all right, let's switch. Let's try to get Hauser, and they just don't get what they want out of it. And Boston is also very willing. Hey, if you want to take yourself out of your normal offense and try to play that way, go ahead, have at it. But they really are, trust that he's going to hold up defensively. And then you're absolutely right. I mean, this guy is an unbelievable shooter. His big thing is he has a very quick and high release. He needs almost no space to get a shot off, and he does a really good job of moving into open spaces. He really reads the game well as far as, all right, this guy drove, I'm going to lift, so I'm in his vision, and he can kick out and find me. He's a pretty good cutter along the baseline. He sneaks in for, a layup or two every game as well. So just a really good, solid player, and he's held up quite well.
Drew Holiday, there's so many things to love about that guy, but how are the Celtics enjoying their first year with Holiday in the backcourt?
Yeah, I think they're going to send something nice to Portland if this pays off the way they hope it will, because getting Blazers legend Drew Holiday has been huge for them. Yeah, I mean, you're fully seeing, we see this sometimes with former All-Star type players. They get to a point in their career where they're like, I've been there, done that with all the other stuff. I just want to win. And Drew Holiday, that's what he does. There's nights when Drew Holiday goes out there, he plays his tail off defensively because he does that every night. But offensively, he is making passes. He may take 4 or 5 shots, and that's kind of it. He's just, focused on getting everybody else going. And then some of these nights, if somebody's missing or other things, you'll see Drew Holiday come out there and he'll take 15 to 20 shots, and he's doing well with that. And I think he's also, this is the most spacing he's ever played with. He's absolutely shooting ridiculous percentages on corner threes. It was up over 60% at one point earlier in the year, and it's almost become like an automatic thing. So, yeah, they love him, and I think they're also very happy with the fact that he has said, hey, my wife and I, we don't want to move again. Like, we like it in Boston. We're very happy here. We want to make this, where it all wraps up. So I think you're going to see them come to some kind of agreement here pretty soon where he gets extended and the Celtics keep this relationship going.
We're talking with Keith Smith from Spotrac and the front office show here on the Rip City Mornings. All right. What was your reaction to Milwaukee last night? Up 19 with just under 8 minutes to play, collapsing and losing in double overtime at home to the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, much like the Celtics against the Hawks the other night. Season's over, and, we'll see you all in the fall. I mean, that's just how people act. These games happen in the NBA more and more often now. The three-point shot, it's both the great equalizer and it's the great unequalizer. And what I mean by that is we see these games where sometimes a team will come out, they'll make 15 three-pointers. The other team will make 5. And that's a 30-point difference that you need to make up somewhere else. And it's pretty rare that you're going to make it up quite that easily. And that's kind of what happened. The Bucks were rolling along, and then the Lakers got hot. They started making a bunch of shots. And one thing the Lakers have done this year is they've defended pretty well. You still see Milwaukee, even though we're in late March, I think a lot of the problems they've had with injuries and guys in and out of the lineup has been they still don't know exactly who they are at the end of these games. Damian Lillard is great. Giannis is great. But it's like, well, who? You, me, or should we get Chris Middleton a touch here? Brook Lopez hasn't had a shot in a while. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a close game and they're still trying to sort through it. So I'm not going to, make any grand proclamations. I was being very facetious with the season is done, but it's, you're still seeing the Bucks. They're trying to figure it out with only a few weeks to go to the playoffs.
Who is the main threat to Boston in the East? Is it Milwaukee or is it somebody else or no one?
I think it's still Milwaukee, and then as weird as this sounds, because they're sitting down there in the play-in tournament, it might be the Miami Heat just because of the history. And we know the Heat, with the Celtics, if Celtics fans wake up and it's, man, we have the Heat in the first round, they're gonna get the jitters, right? It's, I say all the time, the Miami Heat, especially for Boston, but for just about everybody in the league, they're like the classic horror movie villain. Like you got to separate the head from the body, burn both, bury them in the deepest depths of the ocean, and hopefully that they don't come back. And here they are, every year, until it's one of those things that You can't trust making a run from the play-in tournament every year, but it's, there's just so much there for Celtics fans with the Heat that I think that's the team that worries them the most outside of the Bucks.
Eric Spoelstra's got to be the most feared coach in the NBA right now.
Yeah, he's the best coach in the league. I don't think it's, particularly close. I mean, especially when you also look at what he does every year with these guys who are a lot of these Heat guys, they're not going to play on other teams. And we see it sometimes. They sign contracts other places, and they're just not as good because Eric Spoelstra, the thing I think he is very best at is he doesn't ask guys, hey, come in, I need Jimmy Butler's out. Go be Jimmy Butler. It's be the best version of Haywood Highsmith that you can be. Be the best version of Caleb Martin that you can be. That's what we need you to do versus doing this. And then, we trust in the system and the infrastructure around you. We'll maximize you doing that. And that's how he gets so much out of these guys. He is just a great coach. In addition to, tactically, he's going to throw you something that you've never seen before, and he's going to do it at the most opportune time for his team and the most inopportune time for your team.
Hey, Keith, I'm fascinated in the Western Conference with Minnesota and Oklahoma City. It's fun to have different storylines and new teams that are contenders. Minnesota's doing it with size. Oklahoma City's got youth. They've got a MVP candidate in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and Chet Holmgren's having a big year. But what I'm trying to figure out is how is that going to translate for Minnesota and Oklahoma City come playoff time?
Yeah, that's the question we're all kind of asking, because what often happens is we see these teams, they both popped on the scene last year. It's like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Now they've taken the step forward season where they're not down in the play-in tournament. They're not fighting their way in. They're going to be top seeds. So it's like, okay, they built on that. But it's really, all right, what are they going to do in the playoffs? What happens if they're down 2-1 in a series? Are they going to have the guys who can, all right, let's lock in. Let's get this done. Let's, really rally. And I think both teams have some of those guys. But I think some of those guys were in the same place, like I said, almost with Boston, where we've seen Boston can get so far, but they can't get over that last hurdle. I think with the Thunder and the Timberwolves, it's going to be, all right, prove to us that you can win in the playoffs, especially when it's really hard. If they roll through the first round, people are going to be like, all right, well, you were a high seed. You're supposed to. But what do you do when it's the Nuggets in the next round, or you're facing each other? Who's it going to come down to? They've got these great building blocks with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards. Hopefully Karl Anthony Towns gets back, Chet Holmgren, and they both do it, similar ways. They both play pretty good defense. They have enough offense, and these are really good, solid teams. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how they do in their first real playoff runs.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I finally come to the conclusion this year watching the Nuggets. Nikola Jokic is one of the best players I've ever seen. And it took me a while to get to this point, but I realized that this year watching him, I've never seen a guy at his size do what he's done. He is a unique, and I'm just curious what you think as you continue to watch Jokic ball out.
Yeah, I grew up on Larry Bird, but he did it from the forward position where it was like, all right, we can kind of see it. A guy doing it from the center spot like Jokic does is unheard of. They go through these games sometimes. Jamal Murray's been in and out of the lineup with various things going on this year, and they just say, all right, that's fine. We don't need a point guard. We'll just play a bunch of forwards and wings in Jokic, and we'll make it work because he's that good. He just there's. I like to say with him, you can throw things at him that'll throw him off for a possession or two. And then it's like, all right, I've seen it now. Now I know exactly what we're going to do. And you see him doing these things, whether he's bringing it up himself or he's just kind of doing that, lumbering up the floor. But he's calling everything out and telling everybody where to go. And the defense, you almost see them like, oh, man, he knows. Like, he knows what we're going to. And then he just problem solves right there in the moment. He is unbelievable. He's one of my favorite players to watch for that reason.
Boy, you bring up a good point. I grew up on Larry Bird as well. He's my favorite player of all time. But the Celtics would use him like that, too. He could be the primary scorer. He could shoot the three. He could bang down low in the paint and rebound. But a lot of times they would put Bird up at the top of the circle or at the elbow, and he would sit there and just facilitate and feed guys who were cutting and moving towards the basket because he had such great vision, and he could impact the game without even taking a shot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there were moments in Larry Bird's career, and very famously, one of them involves the Trailblazers, where he had things going so well that he played an entire game left-handed. And when they're like, "Why did you do that?" He's like, "I got to save my right hand for the Lakers tomorrow night." Like, it just doesn't even there's so many stories where some of them almost seem like, all right, that's made up, that's legend. But then you find out it's like, no, when 7 or 8 guys confirm that's exactly what happened, it's like, man, this guy is just something else.
All right, 2 more questions for you. Who do you think is the main threat to Denver in the West?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because you would like to say at this point it should be the Thunder or the Timberwolves because of they're the next 2 best teams. There's part of me that still wants to believe in the Clippers, even because of this little bit of a slide that they've been on. I think they can do some things against the Nuggets where it's important if you're going to help on Jokic. It has to be long, bouncy, athletic guys. And when they're sending, whether it's Kawhi Leonard or Paul George or even Russell Westbrook at this point as that second defender, that can cause a little bit of havoc for Denver. But the Clippers have been extremely inconsistent too, so it's a little hard to fully buy in on them. And are they going to be healthy? So that then leads you a little bit further down. So at this point, I'm really I'm not copping out on you, but I don't have a great answer because I believe that much in Denver that I think they're going to get through the conference with I'm not going to say relative ease, but I do think that they're going to get it done again.
I agree. How does Boston match up with them?
Yeah, we've seen it twice. I mean, it came right down to the last possession, both games, and it was really if Boston had made a shot or two, they probably win, and that's I think what the Celtics are looking at and saying, hey, we didn't shoot it well in 2 games against them, but we rarely don't shoot it well. When we don't shoot it well, then we tend to come back with 5, 6, 7, 8 games in a row where we do shoot it well. And I think it's the same kind of theory of, all right, we're going to throw Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis and some of these other guys on Nikola Jokic, and we're going to say, all right, man, you hold him up at least a little, and then we're going to come with size, whether that be Horford's the primary, then we're going to put, bring Porzingis over, or Tatum, who's very long and athletic, or Brown's going to come over with his athleticism. They've defended him straight up with Drew Holiday some and basically said, hey, you're strong, just set your base and the help will come. And then what they do is they like to put Porzingis on like Aaron Gordon and say, hey, roam off him. Now the problem is Aaron Gordon, unlike a lot of other players in the NBA, they'll root to the corner and say, hey, I'm wide open, and keep waving their hands. And teams are like, yeah, we know. There's a reason for it. Gordon knows I'm going to duck in. I'm going to come in on the baseline and fly in. And because it's Jokic, he's going to find me more often than not. So, the basketball fan in me wants that as a 7-game NBA Finals series, just because I think the chess match between those two teams would be phenomenal.
I agree. I want to see it. And you're right, man. Doubling Jokic is playing with danger. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you double him, you're basically saying, hey, carve us up, pick us apart. And, and the thing is, he'll do it from 35 feet away, too. That's the other challenge. I think what Boston and some of the teams that have been able to do okay with them defensively is, hey, when he's 35 feet out, don't send the extra guy. Let's wait till he gets free throw line and under. And then if he carves us up from there, all right, well, hopefully things are condensed enough that the extra defender can get in there and make a difference. But you see these teams, they try to blitz him out there, and he's like, yep, fine. I honestly think Nikola Jokic would be perfectly happy if he could play a game from 35 feet, never take the shot, and just dime up guys all day long because he's so good at it.
Man, Keith Smith, you got to check him out. He's on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA. Does a heck of a job covering the league from Spotrac and the front office show. Keith, always love talking with you, man. Enjoy the games.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. There's Keith Smith. Yeah, doubling Jokic is dumb because you're going to lose that battle almost 100% of the time. And no one's beating Denver. They're going to win another championship. I hate Boston, like most of you. I basically hate most East Coast sports fans because they think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Now, when Larry Bird played for the Celtics, I had a different view on Boston, but I love Larry Bird. And I'm like that with the NBA. I was a big Kobe guy. My 2 favorite basketball players of all time are Larry Bird and Kobe. So I didn't hate the Lakers when Kobe played for them. But now that LeBron does, or before that with Magic and Kareem, hated them. Love the Celtics with Larry Bird, but now can't stand them. The sports hate just flows through me. There's nothing can stop it. But no one's going to beat Denver. They're going to win another championship barring injury. The Clippers aren't going to do it. Although I respect James Harden, he has played a very good year accepting his role and being the facilitator for the Clips. It's not going to be Phoenix. The Clippers can't do it. And we both know that Minnesota and Oklahoma City is not getting it done either against Denver. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Milwaukee and Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals will be epic. I want to see that. But he's right. Milwaukee's been hit and miss, and they still don't know what they want to do late in games, Dame or Giannis or somebody else, and their defense, probably not at the level you need to win an NBA championship. All right. You know what irritates me? A lot of things do, but like I just got this text message. Tell me if you've gotten these. Raise your hand if you have received one of these text messages from an area code you're unfamiliar with. This came in from the 760. Beautiful Wednesday. Mike, are you available? First off, my name's not Mike, and it's not a beautiful Wednesday. I'm looking out the window.
It's
and
not
it's
beautiful,
just absolutely
Chad.
hideous outside.
That's not beautiful at all.
But I get this crap all the time. These phone numbers that I don't recognize, and some of them are like ladies pretending to be somebody and asking me a question. This here is someone looking for Mike. They're trying to lure me into a response. And of course, I don't respond. But how do these people get my number? How are they allowed to have my number? I didn't give them my number. Who are these knobs?
Yeah, you know how it is, Chad. Selling people's data. That's kind of the underbelly of social media and things that we don't want to talk about. So it's like, who knows? Maybe Facebook gave away your number. Maybe it was X. Maybe it was insert social media app here. You never know.
I got your data right here. All right, let's do it. Let's get to the mailbag, Brenden.
All right, Chad, I'm pretty excited to have you on the mailbag, just like I was excited to have Chris yesterday because, sometimes it's nice to get a different perspective or take, questions that maybe Justin wouldn't answer that you could and vice versa. So with that, Chad, put you in the hot seat. Who's your celebrity crush?
Charlize Theron.
Nice. Yeah. You see, I couldn't ask Justin this because I'm going to get him in trouble with the missus,
No, come on. Even if you're married, everyone's got a celebrity crush. But yeah, Charlize to me is like the perfect female. She's spectacular. I'm in love with her. She doesn't know that.
I'd have to work on it, though.
But I feel like I should probably communicate that with her sometime. But yeah, Charlize, 100%.
That's the case of a true celebrity crush right there, folks. Chad didn't even have to think about that. It was just instantaneous. But let's go ahead and officially open up the mailbag, Chad.
Now, wait a second. You were worried about Justin.
Sure.
But Chris is married, too. Were you not worried about Chris
I
getting
did
in
not
trouble with
ask
his
Chris
missus?
that specific question. I've had that one in the chamber for a little while, try to ask people who their celebrity crush is. I'm like, well, Chris told me yesterday, like, I'm married to my best friend. She's listening all show. Okay, so probably shouldn't ask about the celebrity crush there. And, I know Justin's missus listens sometimes, too. So, just trying to keep my hosts.
Who's your celebrity crush?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably Zendaya.
Okay.
Yeah, probably Zendaya. She is stunningly perfect. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and get to the next one, Chad. I'm curious your thoughts on this. What is the dumbest way you felt that you've injured yourself?
So many times this has happened. Like right now, I've got a cut on my thumb because I was trying to dice up an apple last night.
Yeah.
So that was bad. Usually injuries come from me getting irritated and trying to punch something or try to kick something and end up falling down. So usually it happens when it comes to like yard work or something like that. There's nothing specific that comes off the top of my mind. Well, recently I have one of these deals in the garage where it's like a tennis ball that comes down so that I know where to park, right? Well, I've also got bikes hanging from the ceiling in the garage as well. And I can't tell you how many times I have walked, turned, and then bam. And 2 nights ago, I hit the handlebars on my bike, and I saw stars. Like, it almost knocked me out. And, of course,
dang,
no one's around. And I just sat down on the garage floor, and I'm like, it took me a moment to figure out what was going on. That was a brutal experience.
So
and I had no one to blame but myself.
So would someone have had to found Chad doing and woke him up from the garage floor?
Yeah, puppy shots.
Oh my gosh, dude, that is brutal. Your garage and your bikes try to take you out, man. But yeah, that's up there. Like I said, just getting it really does seem like, and I'm kind of the same way, Chad. Like I'm like the worst with paper cuts. I'll cut myself on a piece of paper and I'll be the one that needs to it's like my finger's gonna bleed. That's just how it works, right?
I hate
it's
paper cuts. I did fall out of the shower last week. What happens is that my daughter likes to use bath beads and other stuff. Fine, whatever. But I have to explain to her, it's like, look, you have to rinse the residue out because I get in the shower and that stuff's like ice. And I got in the shower the other day, last week, and my feet went out from under me because of the bath beads. and I went crashing through the shower curtain onto the hard tile floor in the bathroom on my shoulder. And, of course, my only thought was, great, now I'm not going to be able to play golf. I was okay, but thankfully I'm not older because that could have killed me. So I had the conversation once again with Kaylee, like, honey, you have to rinse that out. Use as many bath beads as you want. Just rinse it out so I don't die. And she's like, I'm sorry, Daddy. That's what she told me.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah,
So there you go.
That's definitely a one I wouldn't think of. But, yeah, like, Chad, you probably saw your life flash before your eyes as you went through that shower curtain, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's but, yeah, I can imagine that, bath bombs or whatever that is kind of leaving that real, horrible, just slimy residue, for lack of better terms,
I hate baths, too. Like, I haven't taken a bath in, like, decades. Ridiculous.
Okay, let me ask you this, Chad. Was your last bath in Oklahoma? Ooh, this is a good question.
I think it was. Yeah.
See, so there you go.
And I'm not joking. Like, it legitimately was because we didn't have a bathtub in our bathroom in Colorado. It was just a shower.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't recall taking a bath out here. Yeah, it's pretty much shower time.
Yeah, that's
I don't want to sit in my own mess. Like that.
Yeah,
the whole situation is just odd.
So I'm curious with that. Where are you on like a hot tub? Is that a difference, or are you out on hot tubs because you're not out on like baths and kind of stuff?
If I had a hot tub that only I was using, I'm okay with that. But I'm not sitting in a hot tub with other humans.
Classic.
I'm not. I think that's disgusting. You work at a health club long enough, you see things, you're like, I'm not doing that. I can't trust other people. Horrible. Same reason I don't go to buffets, like low-class buffets where you have a bunch of freaky people in there with their germs. I don't need that in my life. Horrible.
Oh, low-class buffets, man. We've all been to one. We all know. All right, let's get to one more before we close it out here, Chad. You get to pick your skill here. You can overnight be an excellent singer or an excellent dancer. What are you taking and why?
Singer. I want to be a front man for a rock and roll band because I think that would help my social status to be able to find the perfect woman we were talking about. I could even call Charlize if I was big time there.
There you go, right?
I guess the reason why singing's so cool to me is because I can't do it. Like, I cannot sing. I have no musical talent whatsoever. I don't care about dancing. But to be able to stand up, like I went to a concert a couple of weeks ago, Journey.
How was it?
It was awesome. But just being able to, like, get up on stage and sing with all that power in the voice, I can't imagine how great that would be. So, yeah, I dream of that sometimes. So that's where I'm at. All right, big thanks to Brenden for running the ship today. I'll be back tomorrow with the Rip City Drive at 3. Chris Burkhart in for Justin tomorrow with Rip City Mornings. You guys have a fabulous day.